Next presentation is by Ameeta Parekh, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with Ameeta's support of PSTC. Ameeta is with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. She's a senior advisor for scientific collaboration, and she is truly a friend to c-path and PSTC, as she acts as the liaison directly to c-path in the FDA, as well as PSTC in the FDA. So I look forward to Ameeta's presentation.
So good morning. Thanks, everyone. I also would like to thank PSTC and John Michael Sauer for giving me the opportunity to present as a regulatory liaison, to present my perspective as the regulatory liaison regarding the 15 years of PSTC and existing and still ticking. So I'm Ameeta Parekh, and as I mentioned, I've been the liaison. I've been a liaison for nearly 10 years. And my consideration for this talk was 15 years and what makes it tick. So I thought I'll take that angle and that stance to this talk. So as I was starting to prepare for this talk, I was thinking a little philosophically, and so what could I compare it to? It's a very different environment. It's an environment of pre-competitive research, but in order for me to assess why is it still ticking, what is it about PSTC that it's still going and there are so many members? So I thought, being an FDA, being in drug development for many years, I thought of the regulatory pathway and the drug development and the approval. So I thought, what is common between that, the regulatory pathway and drug approval, and what happens in this pre-competitive research and pre-competitive space? So I brought a corollary to that and to the table, and I started thinking, so what are the events that have led to us doing things a certain way in drug development and approval? For instance, if you look at the more than 100 years of history of FDA, you think of the events that have happened. For example, and it's speckled, the history is speckled with many such events. So I just pulled up a few. For instance, the labeling requirements of 1912, the establishment of safety, the establishment of efficacy, human subject protection, PDUFAs, reauthorization, and many such events. But I just picked out a few. So with respect to the first one, and this was the congressional enactment of the Shirley Amendment. So Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for teething and colicky babies, it was unlabeled, yet it was laced with morphine and it killed many infants. What did this lead to? These events basically led to the prohibition of labeling medicine with false therapeutic claims and led to labeling requirements. Another example, the elixir of sulfanilamide contained the poisonous solvent diethylene glycol to dissolve the drug, killed more than 100, many being children. And this led to the establishment of drug safety requirements before marketing, and that was back in 1937. And there were many such events. Another one is this thalidomide, and many of us, or all of us, have heard about this. Thalidomide was a new sleeping pill, and it was found to have caused birth defects. Thousands of babies born in Western Europe with birth defects. And this led to the public support and a strong requirement for drug regulations. Broadly, it was in 1962, it was called the Kefauver-Harris Drug Amendment. Strong drug regulation requirements of both safety and efficacy primarily because of this happening. And again, many such events. Another one that I want to just bring to light was the atrocities during human subject research. If you remember the Nuremberg Code, the Helsinki Declaration, and the 1979 Belmont Report, it all led to revising the regulations for human subject protection, and that was back in 1981. And then, of course, there was the enactment of Prescription Drug User Fee Acts in 1992, and because of its success, it was reauthorized every 5 years, and it's still going. So basically, what is it about all of these events? It was past events, novel ideas that were proposed, and the successes that followed from these novel ideas and their implementation. This as a parallel has innovation and collaboration space of pre-competitive research, and as well PSTC and the Critical Path Institute. So if you remember, this was back in 2004, the stagnation and challenges in drug development. There was a white paper that was published, and it was called The Challenges and the Opportunities for Critical Path. It was called the Critical Path Initiative, basically, published in 2004, identified stagnation. So the event that was identified, basically, or the situation or the circumstance that was identified was the stagnation in this overall product development pipeline. And there were many new ideas, novel ideas that were proposed, and this was all done collectively. And what were these novel ideas that were proposed? A new product development toolkit is needed, is what was identified. It was suggested that a novel toolkit is needed to improve predictability and efficiency, to take a product from lab concept to commercial concept, need for superior product development science to address these challenges, to ensure that basic discoveries turn into something meaningful, medical treatments, the focus being the patient. So need a knowledge base, basically. It needs, this whole toolkit needs to kind of, it's not just from the ideas of biomedical research, but it needs to be reliable, based on reliable insights and science. Basically, the bottom line being pathways to patients. So the focus being patients, and how can we take products from lab to the patients more efficiently. So all of these new ideas, novel ideas, were suggested back then in this 2004, and then there was a 2006 document which had opportunity list ideas. And the bottom line was many ideas, many toolkit, if you want to call it, tools were suggested, and the bottom line being enabling greater efficiency and predictability in drug and biologics development, the overall product development, basically. Things such as advanced trial designs and building drug development tools, predictive models and simulation, getting patient feedback, patient-provided evidence, clinical outcome assessments, and ensuring product safety and medical utility and novel biomarkers. So all of these ideas and concepts, they can't be done by a single entity or a single organization, and can't be done by the FDA alone. So we needed to come up with mechanisms to leverage a lot of external expertise, to bring people together, and to have some sort of an environment where these things could be nurtured and developed, the bottom line being to bring greater efficiency into all of this product development pipeline. So the mechanisms and programs that were established to leverage external expertise. I've just listed a few here, but there are many more, and they continue to grow. Public-private partnerships, centers for excellence in regulatory science and innovation, CERCs as it's commonly known, the BAAs, the PIAs, and experts and fellowship programs, and collaboration with foundations. But let me focus on the first one here, the public-private partnerships. So how have we, over the years, we as an FDA, over the years, utilized this PPPs as a mechanism to leverage external expertise? And this is where I want to bring in the example of PSTC. And PSTC was basically established, and Critical Path Institute was founded to catalyze some ideas that were put forth in 2004 in that Critical Path Initiative white paper. So the Critical Path Institute was founded in 2005, and PSTC, the Predictive Safety Testing Consortium, was formed and officially announced in March of 2006. So 15 years, happy birthday PSTC. And so what does PSTC offer? It brings together industry to share and validate innovative safety testing methods. And it's constantly working under the advisement of the regulatory agencies, the FDA, the EMA, the PMDA. And so currently, if you just focus on what's on their website, PSTC's website, so currently PSTC is focused on developing and obtaining regulatory qualification of improved clinical safety biomarkers for use in drug development, and it serves as a neutral third party to assess drug safety tests. So this is what is defined about PSTC. And how does all of this work? So we at CEDAR, we have many such PPPs that we are collaborating with. We have more than 50 and they are on our website. So how does it work? And it has worked similarly with PSTC. So basically, at the start of this establishment of this partnership, an unmet need is identified, a public health question is identified. So PSTC has identified a public health question that they can help us with. So we are collaborating with PSTC. So what has PSTC done since? They've leveraged resources, expertise based on the identified need. They've identified partners. They've defined the roles and responsibilities. And with this group of experts and partners, they are developing proposals and timelines and milestones and deliverables to address the unmet public health need. And once all of this is pulled together and there is a deliverable and a product at the end, it's shared in public domain. And the goal here with this sharing in public domain is basically that everyone needs to be able to use it and everyone needs to be able to utilize it. The original goal being we need to streamline and make product development more efficient. So 15 years, PSTC has been in this business, and you pause and you think, okay, let me see what's been done. So things have been put in this public domain. If you look at this last box, what is in this public domain of PSTC? So I pulled up, the events and not the events, the activities that they have and the deliverables that they have through the events that have happened over the years. So what do I see? I see two qualifications. The first one was the rodent kidney safety biomarkers. That was in 2008. The second one is more recent. It's the drug-induced kidney injury clinical safety biomarkers. And then there are several letters of support, and it's with FDA, EMA, PMDA. There are submissions that are in the program, in the biomarker qualification program, in the LOI and the qualification what is that? QP qualification. I forget what it is. Qualification plan, the LOI and the qualification plan. So you look at this and you say, wait, it's 15 years and they have 2 qualifications. And yet all of these members are still active. They're still excited. And I see that because I'm the liaison and I attend all of their meetings. And you wonder what brings them to the table. Um, and that's where I want to take you for a change. Let me not just show you what's on their website in public domain. Let me give you my perspective on what is exciting and what is bringing all of these researchers and the scientists excited to the table with PSTC as members. So this is where we started. But instead of taking you to the first box on the top and the last box at the bottom, let me take you to the middle. What is happening here that gets all these scientists really kicking and exciting, and it's just amazing what happens in the middle here. And the way I define it is it's an incubator of collaboration, of novel ideas, of expertise sharing, of sample sharing, of data sharing, of knowledge sharing. Where else do you get something like this? It's all these brilliant scientists who come together. They discuss hurdles that they have encountered. They discuss ideas, and then the best thing is they grow from it, and they take back all this excitement. And I've heard this from individuals, from the leads of the member companies, from the scientists who are collaborating in this incubator space, if I may. So let me just focus on one sliver, which is the biomarker qualification program. What are the milestones associated with the biomarker qualification program? Yes, the pilot program of the BQP was initiated in 2006 at the FDA. The first nephrotoxicity biomarkers were qualified in 2008. However, that's what's on their website. There were so many workshops, there were guidances, there was EMA, FDA harmonization on the processes, for instance. There were surveys that were conducted by PSTC. What else was there? What is the focus in terms of what did PSTC do throughout all this time? Yes, there were 2 qualifications if you look at it today, but collaborations for data sharing, for tools development, for qualification, not just with certain member companies, the PPP member, the PSTC member companies, but also across the public-private partnerships, such as the FNIH Biomarker Consortium, collaboration with IMI-1 Safety Consortium, collaboration with Duchenne Regulatory Science Consortium, collaboration, for instance, with IMI-2's TransBio line, and even IQ-MPS, collaboration on in vitro systems, and that's happening as we speak. So all of this stuff that has been done by PSTC, it just brings to the forefront the knowledge base, not just limited to PSTC members, but across many consortia, not just US based, but internationally. Collaborations with other PPPs, yes, but also with academic institutions towards public discussions and workshops. PPPs and academia public workshops have been held. For example, I don't know how many of you recall, there was the Maryland CERSI collaboration and a workshop that was held several years back, I would say, the FNIH workshop related to the evidentiary criteria for biomarker qualification, the analytical development, the clinical validation, and as well the statistical analysis, scientific and regulatory considerations for the analytical validation of assays used in the qualification of biomarkers in biological matrices. So that was another workshop that was held. All of this was done in collaboration with either other PPPs or with academic institutions. The concept, for instance, of the letter of support concept, where did that come from? It was generated through discussions with and among PSTC members. There was frustration among the members that qualification takes very long and we've put in all this effort. What happens to these promising biomarkers? If we are working on these promising biomarkers, why not get a letter of support as an endorsement? And that came out of discussions amongst PSTC and FDA. Not to mention the education and training webinars. And I mentioned training webinars. You will be seeing and hearing the webinars that have been planned by PSTC for this 15th year anniversary, and they are interspersed the whole year. And you will see from these webinars how broad and wide and they're not limited to just qualification. They go from in vitro tools to clinical needs and outreach to patients and what are patient needs. So it's absolutely fantastic how broad their whole portfolio is. And you'll find out from the training webinars and also the education tools that they have on their website. So let me just, again, I'm still in that middle area, the incubator, the knowledge incubator, as I call it, that doesn't get captured and it doesn't get acknowledged. But that is something that keeps bringing these scientists to the table and they remain as members. And I've talked to many of the members one-on-one and hallway conversations. So what's the scientific value of knowledge sharing to PSTC members? What value do you put to that? I think you can't put a value to it. It's just amazing. And let me give you some examples here. Discussion of analytical methodologies, strengths, and nuances. Types of other tools, example, in vitro systems, microphysiological systems, for instance, being developed and explored for drug-induced injury assessment. Presentations from invited researchers and the ensuing discussion and the Q&A that happens during the PSTC monthly working group meetings. They invite experts and there is so much discussion and it's such a rich environment for sharing science and knowledge. Members bring experience and new ideas into the discussions. And there's participation in the development of the next generation of safety biomarkers, which is so exciting. Discussion of evidentiary criteria for biomarker qualification, not just for qualification, but of novel biomarkers that are to be developed for the next generation of safety assessments. Collectively moving the science forward, bringing the methods and analytes into the 21st century. I mean, these are all such invaluable, I would say, knowledge sharing pieces. Willingness to share resources, samples, data, and knowledge. It just seems all of this is so contagious. And I say that because I've seen this in these monthly meetings for each of these working groups. And most of the people attend every meeting. So that's just amazing. What is the biggest thing that happens? It keeps researchers on cutting edge of the field. So yes, qualification is what the goal is on their website. They don't have this as the goal, keeping researchers on the cutting edge of the field. But I've heard this from the scientists, from the member company scientists who come and attend these meetings. The interactions with and feedback from the regulators related to these biomarkers and their use. So these are some of the pieces that's the scientific value of knowledge sharing to PSTC members. That's all happening in that middle knowledge incubator space that doesn't get captured. Let me add some more and maybe focus on the biomarker discussions that happen, for instance. And there's a lot of this discussion that is cross-pollination, and that's helping all the scientists, and they take that knowledge back. And the companies are elevating in their knowledge base based on all of this knowledge sharing. Example, the things that get discussed in this space, they are not laid out in any specific guidance. One biomarker or a composite biomarker? If it's a composite, how many? How to choose which ones? How about statistical analysis for the composite? Where do you get that? There's no guidance for, such types of things. Fit for purpose or qualification. There's brainstorming on that. Is this a good candidate for surrogate? These are all interesting and important regulatory questions. Let's think of the context of use. And all of these things get discussed in such incubator discussions. Clinical validation, analytical validation, very interesting concepts behind each one. Analytical methodology, the assay nuances, assay kits, vendor considerations. Uh, should this be a diagnostic? Again, another regulatory question. Non-clinical qualification. What is the value to the patient for this non-clinical qualification? And then there's this whole new aspect. So there are biomarkers that are qualified. How are these being used? Are they being used by companies, by drug developers, by academia in exploratory setting? Can the companies share this? Can they share it and maybe have some regulatory implications? For example, can this lead to more qualification and broader uses and different contexts of use or things like that? And this concept that I just mentioned at the end, sharing the use of biomarkers by different companies or academic institutions or researchers, has been a concept that has been endorsed and supported by CEDAR. And is there a platform that can be established? And PSTC has established this platform, the Biomarker Data Repository that many of you may have heard of. And it's going to be discussed again during the webinars and later today, maybe. So what is this endorsement? So Dr. Woodcock supported this BMDR, Biomarker Data Repository concept. Basically, this is a pilot. The PSTC is currently reaching out to industry partners to contribute to a biomarker data repository as part of a pilot project aimed at new and modified contexts of use for kidney safety biomarkers. So the kidney safety biomarkers have been qualified. How are they being used? Can you share this information? What decisions are being made? And Dr. Woodcock, when she was in CEDAR, she basically supported this effort. And she basically said, we hope our industry colleagues will contribute, and we look forward to the output of this pilot, and hopefully in the future, maybe an expanded repository. So let me shift back to this picture here. And so we just talked about the concept of can we figure out what and how these biomarkers are being used in the industries and by researchers. What is the impact of all this effort? So a lot of effort has gone into all of this, 15 years. What is the impact of all this? How are these drug development tools being used? Is it even helping? Because if you remember, the original goal was to streamline and to make it more, efficient, all of this to make everything more efficient, the whole product development more efficient, drug development more efficient. And then you pause and you think, is it helping? So I understand a survey was done, and I also talked to a few people. So each person, each researcher is looking at this piece of the puzzle, the qualified biomarkers or the exploratory biomarkers that are being developed in this pre-competitive space. And they are, I'm sure, going back to their labs and thinking, how does this fit into my whatever they are developing, into my product development or my area of whatever the industry that company is developing? And there was a survey that was done, and it was very enlightening, and it basically showed emerging safety biomarkers have been used. And there's a paper, and I've given the reference here. 83% of the companies are using this, but they're using it across different phases, more so early on than later in product development. So ESBs, emerging safety biomarkers, they are used in forward translation, for instance, to address species-related toxicities, backward translation to understand clinical signals, during clinical trials for exploratory assessments, and during trials to inform on patient safety. So they're being used for a variety of reasons. But then if you pause and you think, wait, can you share this with us in more specific ways? Well, compound, there's hesitation, right? So the reasoning is, well, compound is still under development and we cannot share this exploratory information. It's really more for our internal use. Okay, at least you're using it. Well, the assay is not perfected and we don't understand these biomarkers yet, and we cannot share non-robust data. Again, understandable. We use these exploratory biomarkers. This is what I've heard. Exploratory biomarkers primarily for creating a foundational knowledge base for our companies. So it's really as a knowledge base and information generation for the companies. What else? We use these biomarkers for XYZ, but we can't share it yet because these are company confidential information. So these are the things that were captured in this paper. There was a survey done, but this is very important. I mean, this is very useful. And what I come away from this paper is it's being used very widely. A lot of them are using it. And that's what keeps bringing these researchers and these scientists and these member companies to this incubator knowledge space where they're discussing all of this and they're taking it back. And this basically represents that industry member that goes back and thinks, how do I use this in my drug development and make my whole pipeline, de-risk my whole pipeline with this knowledge that I've gained from this incubator space? So let me recap. It's not just qualification of safety biomarkers. That's what's stated as the mission of PSTC. It's more than that. What more is there? And that's what I have seen as a liaison to PSTC for the last 10 years, bringing together experts from regulatory agencies, FDA and EMA and PMDA, through outreach efforts, identifying industry and academic experts, and having them discuss specific projects with the group, identifying patient groups, comprehending their needs. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the patient. How do we de-risk drug development in this whole safety space? And that's primarily the goal. Collaboration with other PPPs towards translational applications and utility. And I gave several examples how PSTC is collaborating with other PPPs to advance in this whole safety space. Collaboration to share, to learn, to validate, develop biomarkers and methodologies, data, knowledge, experience, and expertise sharing. That's what's happening in this incubator, knowledge incubator space, keeping researchers on the cutting edge of their scientific field. That's not defined in their mission, but that's what's happening, and that's what's keeping the scientists so excited, and they keep coming back and attending these meetings, and they learn from this, working continuously under the advisement of the regulatory agencies. That's more important, because at the end of the day, if you remember, what is the how does it work, the PPPs, how does it work? You have to identify that goal and that unmet need, and that unmet need, if you have the regulatory agencies collaborating, that unmet need has to align with FDA's mission, with CDER's mission of product development. So at the end of the day, what is the impact? What is the so what? How did we address and advance that mission? I think all of this is what brings scientists into this pre-competitive space that's offered by PSTC. And I think you'll see that the webinar series that are planned for this 15th year celebration will be reflective of the range of PSTC's efforts to advance public health. It's not just limited to biomarker qualification, safety biomarker qualification, and they've even expanded into disease biomarkers, and you'll see through their webinars, and I step back and I feel the question that I started with, what makes it tick in a regulatory liaison's perspective? And I pulled this out of Socrates. It's basically these top two things that I've circled here. It's basically strong minds assess events, they share their hurdles, they share events, learn from them, discuss novel ideas, and most importantly, they grow collaboratively. And at the end of the day, the so what piece to the patient, which is the most important thing, you'll see how well all of these things come together, because the goal in our minds for all of us is, how do we make it easier, the more efficient, this whole product development pipeline, and the goal being, the focus being on the patient. Thank you.